Had a request for a quick look at the PSARflip technique. So here's what we have. So the PSAR, our current default settings are at 0.02 and 0.12. And what that gives you is a practically well-tuned, pretty nice trailing stop that after you get what we're calling the PSARflip is when you had in this case you had a long trend that was going up, and notice how it parallels the southern skin of the dragon, trails it by a little bit. That trend was so strong that the MACD histogram had gotten well above the Red River and then rolled over into the fall. Was starting to slow down a little bit with this little slowdown, that slowdown, and then a third one. So it had rolled over into the fall and was back in the Red River, and the PSAR just kept marching straight up, and then price fell through the RL10 and the 4 period moving average of the 10, broke through the skin of the dragon, hit the PSAR. That would trigger the PSARflip on the in that moment. Where I want you to notice the PSAR goes from here to here, then that becomes the stop, and now we have a downward bias, and then from this breakdown here at about 312, it gets to a low of about 308, then reverses the next day, and then moves up over the next 4 days, where price goes back through the dragon, hits the PSAR here at about 315, which causes the PSARflip, and that gives us the alert that we need to be adopting a long side bias. We've sort of used this idea that the second dot in the PSAR, you absolutely have to be, I think we call that like the two eyes of the dragon. So those two little dots are kind of key. But the first one is that the flip that we're calling a PSARflip, and it gives you an upward bias. And notice that if you entered around here around 315, that PSAR gives you about a $8 stop, or somewhere down around Z minus 1, which, you know, when you get to here, that's about that's at Z 1.5 all the way down. So that's about a 2 standard deviation, you know, on the width of the river, which ain't bad. It's well below the Bollinger Band mean, so you could actually play that. In our tactical ideas, we would notice that the slope of the dragon is up, the river is up, the 90 is still above the 270, the dragon has resumed. You get the RL crosses over the dragon here, so you get an RLXT formal entry, which is legit. You get a P1 here as well, where it crosses back through the 30. So somewhere around 315, you're justified in entering, whether that was on the initial or if you were looking for a little more confirmation, and that's the PSARflip that we're looking at. So as we come up to the current move from 315, which got as high as 325, so that's about a 3% gain from here up into here over the next 12 trading days or so. The PSAR acted as a pretty reasonable trailing stop. You might have adopted the belly of the dragon and been fine. That might have kicked you out here or getting really close in this area. But the point being that the PSARflip itself would be triggered by a price at about 320, and then you could, so if it got down to 320, you'd expect the PSARflip to be up here at about 326 would be the next stop, just in the same way that this PSARflip was just below that excursion to the downside. You'd expect to see the next, if this hits, the PSARflip would be about 325. So that gives you something like about a $5 cushion between the flips on the PSAR. So this is looking at the S&P on a daily, but on a weekly basis, this is turning out to be pretty handy as well. Let me see if I can shift to a weekly, and just want you to notice that you had some notice the PSARs, when they flip, give you long trends. This one was nice. This one was pretty nice, although there has been increased volatility in here. But that protects you against the move back to the 200. So the PSARflips on weeklies and actually on monthlies can be of interest too. This one gave you a flip, so you were looking to get around 286, and if you use the PSAR or even the belly of the dragon, you're still in up to 325. So that's a $40 move on that monthly. So and then this PSARflip, which hit and triggered you at 270. If you get out at 270, or even if you go 265, that protects you against a move all the way down to 230. So that protected you on $35, and then the PSARflip gets you back in, and that's just on monthly. So one of the things that we've noticed is that on the weekly PSARflips, it's not unusual to see them triggering owls. I'm going to see if I can find one in here. So yeah, here's actually one. So when you get this is sort of the classic one, after that big move that took it all the way down to 235, you start looking now at the weekly. Look how sweet this one is. You get a 1, 2, 3 entry, you have a P1, you have the dragon rolls up, the 30 rolls up, the RLXD happens here for an entry around 265, and you're already into the third dot of the PSARflip on the weekly. So 235 kept you in all the way to here to 280, 285 was the exit, and you could have, that was even with a $10 trail. And then the PSARflip again gets you back in somewhere around 291. You're kicked out. The PSARflip again gets you back in, and then if you're using the PSAR as a trail stop, even if that gets you out, you're back in at 299 all the way to 320. So the PSARflip is the term of art that we're using to describe this phenomenon, and I just would highlight the value of 0.02 and 0.12, which is not the it's a tighter stop and a more rapid acceleration, I think, than the traditional parameters. But that's one that we've kind of settled on for the last couple of years. Okay, so that's the PSARflip. Thanks for your kind attention.